The future of the Black Sea grain deal is in the doldrums. Russia has halted the grain deal, heightening uncertainty over global food supplies by closing a crucial export route for Ukraine, one of the world's top suppliers of wheat and vegetable oils.
I deeply regret the decision by the Russian Federation to terminate the implementation of the Black Sea Initiative, including the withdrawal of Russian security guarantees for navigation in the northwestern part of the Black Sea. This initiative has ensured the safe passage of over 32 million metric tons of food commodities from Ukrainian ports. And the World Food Programme has shipped more than 725,000 tons of to support humanitarian operations, relieving hunger in some of the hardest hit corners of the world.
UN Secretary General further added that a related pact between the United Nations and Moscow to help facilitate Russia's grain and fertilizer exports was also terminated. The decision announced by Moscow comes after deadly blast on Crimean bridge. Waterborne drones struck the sole bridge connecting Russia to the annexed Crimean Peninsula. The Kremlin has blamed Kyiv for the drone attacks that killed 2 people, also shutting down Russia's key artery for military and civilian access to the peninsula, although Moscow says the 2 events are not related.
Поэтому ее действие прекращается. Как только российская часть договоренности будет выполнена, российская сторона вернется к реализации этой сделки.
Interestingly, Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has said that Russia wants to extend the Ukraine grain deal despite Kremlin comments to the contrary.
Despite today's statement, I believe that the President of the Russian Federation, my friend, Mr. Putin, wants this humanitarian bridge to continue.
The landmark deal brokered by the United Nations and Turkey, signed by Moscow and Kyiv in July 2022, allowed Ukrainian grain to be exported through the Black Sea. The deal has been extended several times, that too at the last moment. But this time, Russia has been saying for months that conditions for its extension had not been fulfilled.
Она остановилась, зерновая сделка остановилась. Как только будет выполнена российская часть, российская сторона вернется незамедлительно к реализации этой сделки.
EU chief Ursula von der Leyen has condemned Russia's decision. She branded the move as cynical. Even Britain has put forward its thoughts. Britain says the move taken by Russia was disappointing and accused Russia of risking global suffering. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz says Russia's refusal to extend the agreement sends a bad message to the rest of the world. And according to the US ambassador to the United Nations, Russia's exit from the grain deal is an act of cruelty, further accusing Moscow of holding humanity hostage. So the big question now is, what will happen as the deal ends? Prices for some staple foods would likely rise, but the situation is better than in the months after the war started. Grain supplies have improved from other producers such as Russia and Brazil. As per last week's data, wheat prices have fallen about 17% so far this year, while corn is down around 26%. The current global food crisis, however, is far from over. The World Food Programme said last month that multiple emergencies had overlapped, creating largest and most complex hunger and humanitarian crisis in over 70 years. In 2022, a record 349 million people experienced acute hunger and 772,000 teetered on the edge of a famine. And for the latest update, Tatiana Kukareva, who is a senior journalist, is joining us live from Moscow. Tatiana, it's good to have you and welcome to the broadcast. Russia's withdrawal from the agreement, what happens now?
Good evening, Eric. Well, look, I do believe that the first thing that we should expect is a very obvious reaction of the markets, and I think that the wheat prices have gone up already as we speak. So the biggest implications, as far as anyone can predict at this moment, are the economic ones.
There are so many people who are condemning Russia over this move, including Britain, the EU, the European Union. What do you think will be Russia's reaction to their condemnation?
Well, funny that you should mention, the EU and the UK, whereas Moscow has been saying this for quite some time, that the grain exports that were facilitated throughout this deal were coming exactly to those countries. They were not going to the poorest nations, the nations that the African countries, and even our partners such as Egypt, that have been complaining of shortages of grain due to the conflict. Those were not the countries receiving those exports, but the EU technically were. So, it's a very simple position that Russia has been maintaining, and President Putin has said it repeatedly, actually, that the Russian part of the deal, the deal that there are two parts to this deal, and the second one concerns specifically Russia's interests, that Russia's exports are also to be facilitated, that the Russian Agricultural Bank was supposed to get back on SWIFT, and it was and didn't, and it's been a year. Right. There's also the ammonia transition that was supposed to function, and it's still not functioning. The humanitarian corridor was used by Ukraine, to facilitate attacks on the port city of Sebastopol. So it's very clear and it's very obvious that Russia has a lot of things to be unhappy about, and any criticism those countries can direct at themselves for not facilitating those demands and those conditions that were agreed upon a year ago.
Tatiana, there's also another concern. There are some people who are asking, does Ukraine have a plan B? And if they do, what is it?
It's a very interesting question, and I'm actually one of those people. I hope to see that. I think that, this has been a huge mistake from the get-go, and it takes us back to the beginning of the conflict. It's kind of, nobody expects for Moscow to act upon its interests. We've been talking about red lines for months, and everybody was like, okay, they're talking about red lines, but they're not going to be acting upon them. And then, the president decided to actually do that. And everybody was explicitly shocked at this, action. And it's the same kind of situation here. We've had this deal for a year. Russia's interests were not addressed during this year, and nobody expected for, everybody is condemning Russia now, but nobody was talking about, well, let's maybe do something about those conditions that were clearly spoken about. So I think that we're going to see exactly to which extent the West, that is backing Ukraine in this conflict, has prepared itself and its proxy for the result that we're seeing today.
All right, Tatiana, finally, and I want your quick reaction to this one. The Black Sea grain deal has been at the center of a months-long propaganda battle between Moscow and Kyiv over who can rightly claim to be feeding the world. Now that the deal is halted, is there a likelihood that poor countries may go hungry?
Well, there's always a likelihood that the hunger will be worse, and this deal was, in theory, a lifeline to battle hunger. However, in practice, it did not really live up to the expectations. So as I said before, the exports did not go to those countries that we're talking about. And I do believe that this is the biggest problem that the world should address right now. We need a deal that would satisfy everybody, not just the West, not just Ukraine. It's very simple.
All right. I've been talking to senior journalist Tatiana Kukareva. Tatiana, thank you very much for all your insights and for talking to WION World is One today.
Good evening, Eric.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.